What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Nick, let's talk about Saints OTAs right now. And I want to talk about Trevor Penning. And there's a larger conversation maybe that I want to have about Penning, Foskey, and Turner. But before that, you had a really good piece go about Trevor Penning's offseason, an offseason in which he's healthy, an offseason in which he's explored a couple of different O-line specific training opportunities. How has Trevor Penning looked to find some productivity and find some success in this offseason?
Yeah, that was a story. Trip did talk to his trainers and everything just about some of the work that he's doing. And, I think it's just really the big thing for him. I do believe it's the confidence factor and just kind of believing that he can do it. And that, I think the reset to the right side kind of maybe possibly clears some of that mechanism for him. The last OTA we were out at, it was right after we talked last Tuesday. They practice again tomorrow for the media, so we won't have anything until tomorrow. I thought it was just I thought the first exposure to him was better than the second for us. And, this is kind of the problem with this time of year is you're trying to break down 15 snaps every single practice. And it's an incredibly unfair process. Someone's a hero one day, the next day they're not. But, I thought some of the stuff in pass pro in the last practice, like there were a couple shaky things. Like he just kind of fell off sides on one snap, kind of fell out of his stance. I think he looks really good in run blocking. Like you see the range and athleticism and all that, but it's just a reminder that this is a guy learning a new position and not everything's going to be perfect. And, I think you want to see mistakes now, but does he fix them? And, what's the accumulation of successes by the end of training camp? That's going to kind of be the process. I still have confidence that I think he's probably going to end up being the starter. I think that he can probably get to a serviceable level. But it is going to be a lot of work, and he's working to get there, and I think we're kind of seeing that now. But yeah, the offseason program incredibly important, but I think more important is just going to kind of be the day-to-day coaching that he gets here, and does he feel comfortable with it? I think Doug Marrone's style probably didn't mesh with him, and sometimes that happens, and that's not an indictment on Doug Marrone at all. Like he got some good stuff out of Cesar Ruiz the first year. Second year was kind of a dip, but. I think Penning has a lot of work to do, and we're going to see where it kind of ends up at the end of it. But they do seem committed to him. They do seem to have confidence in him. People I talk to that tell the truth kind of like what they're seeing with him so far. So those are all positive, developments. But, I think it still is very much to be seen, to be determined.
One of the position groups, because I know the offensive line is probably the one that we're all the most concerned about, but receiver is intriguing to me because you're betting on guys that you drafted a year ago, like A.T. Perry is a guy that you drafted last year, and I love the draft pick at the time. And when you don't add one in this draft, like that kind of tells you how the Saints feel about him. Like right now, if you were in 11 personnel, what would that look like at receiver, tight end, running back?
So I think, the starting receivers are probably the top three will probably be Olave, Shaheed, and A.T. Perry. Now, like it depends on like are you trying to sell the possibility of some type of run? Then I think you get Cedric Wilson out there. He's probably going to be their best blocker. I think he ends up being 4. I think Bub Memes ends up being number 5, and that's kind of my guess on those guys. I think Juwan's probably still your top tight end. I think Foster Moreau will probably give you a little more this year, though. So, but I think if you're kind of just most snapped out 11 personnel, I think it's Juwan at the top, and I think it's Alvin in the backfield. I think Kendrick Miller has a really good chance of carving out a bigger role here, and I think ideally at the end of the season, it's Jamal Williams kind of being just pushed aside a little bit, and not due to talent. I think Jamal could probably be better in this offense too overall, but. I think if Alvin and Kendra are doing what they should be doing, like there shouldn't be a ton of snaps. And then, you got to get Taysom his 80, 90 touches or whatever in there too. So someone has to get squeezed out. That would be kind of the best case scenario. I do think that they struck out at wide receiver this offseason, though. I don't know that the lack of adding somebody was based on confidence. Like, I had heard it was high on their list and that they just kind of, it just didn't kind of materialize to where they could get one. I think they would have drafted one pretty early too. Like if things had shaken out a certain type of way, that possession type receiver is something that I don't think that they've answered. A.T. Perry could do it. I mean, there's definitely a possibility that he continues to get better and emerges and all that stuff. I mean, I do it myself. I forget that he only had 246 yards last year. It kind of felt like more. If you made me guess, like, just out of nowhere, like it feels like more than 246, but that's not a ton of production. But he looked really good once he finally got out there. So I think there's a chance, but I think they definitely would have liked to enter the season with a more certain answer at wide receiver.
Nick, so you kind of touched on Penning, but when I look, there's Peyton Turner, there's Isaiah Foskey, there's Trevor Penning, all very high draft picks. That it's not just like they haven't worked out; you're literally getting nothing from those guys. It sounds like you maybe think Penning is most suited to emerge. Like, which one of the three do you think you actually get contribution from? And what's holding the others back?
Well, I mean, Peyton Turner it's health every single year. It's health. It's not so much development with him. It's just like he can't stay healthy and get on the field, which is it's a shame because like I really think that he could be solid. Like I think he could be a solid contributor at some point. Foskey I think still has to develop. That was kind of the most surprising thing to me last year. I thought when they drafted him and then you look at the production and you kind of look at, how he was winning in college, it kind of felt like, all right, this guy's going to find a way to at least get on the field and make some plays. Like there isn't going to be this like super long development. Like he was making plays against real college competition. And then like, it just didn't kind of happen. He was a little bit right. There was an injury too for him, but I think it was more the developmental aspect that kind of held him back a little bit. So, it's just kind of building on that a little bit. Out of the three, the most likely to get production, I think it just ends up being Penning because I feel like they kind of want him to win that, and I think he will. Now, like I will say this, like we know this team is not going to force a player on the field if they aren't able to play. Like they already showed you that with Penning. They don't really care about like saving face with draft picks. They'll admit a mistake there and kind of move on and not double down and try to get something out of like a failed cost or whatever. And you can just kind of go through like the list of guys like recently Penning, Peyton Turner, they hit on Cesar Ruiz, Davenport, they let go even though they put the two picks into acquiring him. Sheldon Rankins didn't get a second contract. They let Pete test the market. Stephon Anthony got cut. Haioli Kakaha got cut. Like there's a lot of misses on high picks.
So
and like
they
aren't just going to keep putting them out there just because. So he's going to have to earn it, but I kind of think he will. And I think they have good coaches on the offensive line. He's going to be back out at Duke Mini-Weather's camp, the O-line masterminds, after the break. Tron Armstead and all them guys are out there. I know Tron's kind of like in a mentorship role out there at that program. So that's good for him. Cesar Ruiz goes out there, so they'll keep working together and they'll be familiar on that side of the line. So I think there's a lot of things working to his advantage. It's a wild group in the trenches on both sides though, because it's like there's so many ifs and maybes, and it's just a lot of lottery tickets. Chase Young being one, Nick Saldiveri on the other side being another. He's looked really good, by the way, and I think he'll probably win that job. But I mean, it's a lot of resources and a lot of maybes in those trenches, and that's what's going to determine the season, really. I mean, like how many of those hit?
I don't. It's funny. I don't think this is going to happen. But if you want to go full sunshine pump. Like, if the O-line ends up being good, you can actually be good for a really long time. I mean, if you think about it right now, it's all five guys that you drafted with top picks. And, like, if they come together under Benton and Kubiak in the new system, like, all of a sudden, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you want to just be overly optimistic, like, you could be set up for years potentially. And that, like we've talked about all offseason, that is the biggest swing position on this entire roster.
Yeah, I mean, I did a story recently, and like honestly, you go through the NFL, and most teams are hiding two bad offensive linemen on their offensive line. Like offensive lines stink. Like they don't develop them anymore in college.
Wow.
Like the way they play in college is it just doesn't work the way it used to. The offseason program in the NFL, like there isn't the same type of development. Like there's no contact. Like you aren't improving in these practices because like there's no contact. And then when there is contact, it's not like real contact. So it's just kind of. It takes a long time, and it's the development at a lot of these positions is really, really slow. But teams that you think have good offensive lines, if you really go through, look at it, pressure's allowed, like do the analytics, the film study, all that stuff. The teams that have good offensive lines have like three good guys, and most teams have two. A lot of teams have one. I mean, there's a lot of bad offensive line play. So like to get to like just a serviceable level, the bar really is not that high. The problem is the guys you're asking to get to serviceable here, like one of them, one of the most, the second most important position is at below zero right now. Like, so just to get the average is a fight for him. So he just needs to find a way to get there. You haven't seen it from Saldivari. McCoy's a yes. Tally, he's a rookie. You haven't seen it from him. Saldivari hasn't played yet. So like you're going into the season with one answer, kind of 1.5 with Ruiz. So it's a big, you got to really climb the curve to get there, but the curve isn't that steep. So if they can just find a way to be serviceable at some of these positions, like it can be okay. And then you add in the scheme. The scheme hides a lot of bad offensive line play.
Yeah.
Like the 49ers have a good tackle. The rest of their line's kind of mid. Like
really,
and they hide it really, really well with the scheme and the play action and just kind of the way they play. And if you isolate play action away from it and then start looking at time to throw on actual dropbacks, they're below 2 seconds on average. Like if you can play like that and then your longer developing plays are play action, you can hide a lot of bad line play. And that's what the system kind of does. So I like it for the players they have, but at some point you do have to block on a 5 or 7 step drop, and that's where we're going to kind of find out.
Hey, I want to go to the other side of the ball real quick. Kool-Aid McKinstry, obviously somebody that the Saints love. They trade up for him. They draft him, even though they had, players at a similar position that they really like as well. What maybe did the plan look like here early on for Kool-Aid?
So he's still rehabbing that foot fracture. He's been out at practice, just kind of watching a little bit. I think we saw him like it was really far away, and even through the binoculars, like looked tiny, but it looked like he was riding a bike during the last practice.
Yeah.
I think the idea for him is him and Alante are going to compete in the slot, and that's going to kind of be the big battle of the summer. And I think Alante has all the upside in the world. It's just kind of putting it together. And I think one of the things for him is if he just kind of embraces being a slot corner, and I think it took him until about week 8, week 9 last year to kind of buy into the identity. He kind of talked openly about it and his struggles just kind of with adjusting the position, thinking about it. You got to study different and train different, and your whole perspective has to be like, I'm going to be the best slot corner, and not like I'm a guy who will be better on the outside, but I'm in the slot. That's probably true with him anyhow, but I think you do have to kind of have that buy-in. If he has that buy-in, I think he can ward off all comers. Last year at this time, it was kind of the same conversation with Taylor and Adebo, and I thought Taylor was going to win the outside job, and Adebo shows up, plays great, battles him off. Like it could be the same thing. Like Kool-Aid, you kind of expect him to be on the field, traded up for him, 2nd-round pick, looked amazing at Alabama. You kind of expect him to win the job, but I mean, I'm not writing anyone off quite yet. I kind of learned my lesson last year, but I think Kool-Aid's someone that could maybe in your dime package play some safety snaps too. Like he kind of has that ability. So I think there's different ways for him to get on the field. That's going to be a good battle. I think that's going to kind of be like the highlight of the whole summer is those two kind of going back and forth at it. And I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I mean, the talent at cornerback is kind of crazy if they get everybody in and everybody buys in and everybody wants to be here. Like that's arguably like, I don't know, probably like a top 5 cornerback group in the NFL. I mean, it has to be. It has to be. Like there are just a lot of really good players in that room.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.